All right, good morning. It is Tuesday morning, and we got a show for you today. I've got Cameron and Mario coming in. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
How are we holding up this morning?
Pretty good. Hey, first off, just so we don't have another, sound issue, give us a 1 in the chat if you can hear all three of us. Everyone speak. Cameron, go ahead.
I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
I am 99% certain that we have sound right now.
All right.
There is no Baileys in my coffee. It's just Baileys. Don't tell anybody.
There is no coffee in your Baileys? What? So, it is Tuesday. We are 2 weeks out.
2 weeks exactly.
Yep. And as of right now, all but 10 states have early voting. So unless you are in West Virginia, Maryland, Kentucky, Oklahoma, D.C., New York, New Jersey, Michigan, Florida, Delaware, and I said D.C., so all but 9 states and D.C. So unless you're in one of those 9, get your ass out and vote early. We talked about this the other day. Early voting is stupid. Voting early is smart. Because if you vote early, you prevent someone from stealing your vote. You make it so that you're not going to show up on election day and be told, oh, well, this says you already voted. No. I'm voting. Because if you show up and you're told you already voted, you will fill out a provisional ballot, and that is the same as not voting.
Yep.
In fact, it's worse than not voting because it's also inconvenient.
Mercifully, I live in the state of Florida, and our elections are pretty tight here, so I'm not worried about it. But
yeah, early voting in Florida starts on the 26th.
But yeah, Yinzers, Michiganders, Georgians, yeah, absolutely, it would make sense. Arizona,
yeah, not popular with the masses, but not only is early voting just retarded, but honestly, so many things that we take for granted about voting. Oh, well, it's not convenient. Oh, well, what is it? Just shut up. If voting is inconvenient for you, don't vote. I'd rather lose to people that gave a shit about going to the polls than whatever the system we have now is where, oh, I just didn't feel like it today or whatever. Oh, no, you had to stand in line for 2 hours in the heat? Yeah, gosh, man. That's awful compared to
I don't know nothing about that.
Or it was raining, or it was this, or it was that. It's like,
what about
no. I got to stop you right there. If it's raining and you're the sort of person that bothers, okay.
No, don't vote. Don't vote. I don't think voting should be any easier.
It takes all types, Chris. They told me it takes all types. You're telling me we don't need people who can't handle a bit of rain? Come on.
Phantom Fixer says Florida, we started the 21st. I don't think so. I mean, I could be mistaken, but my list says Florida starts on the 26th. Phantom Fixer says he voted last night. Okay, cool.
No, but what I was getting at is I don't think voting should be one scintilla easier. In fact, and I know you guys won't disagree with this, I'd be okay with voting being harder. Like, seriously, if you can't put forth the minimum amount of effort required to vote, don't vote.
I think the Reconstruction South got voting right with the literacy tests. We should bring that back.
No, brother, if I had my way, married with children and a landowner. 1 vote per household.
I will design a system that.
And I know that happens to be me now, but it was I've maintained that position since before I was married with children and a landowner. Right. Or at least a net positive taxpayer, right? Okay, so here's what we're going to do this morning. We're going to start off by talking about the polls a little bit. So right now I've got here. I'm going to go to the 270 to win. This is what they call the consensus poll. This is supposed to be the consensus of all the major pollsters and what they think is happening. And looking at that, it says that Kamala has a slight edge in basically guaranteed states, or more correctly, she has a slight edge in guaranteed electoral college votes over Trump. Now, Trump has an edge generally here, and I say generally because you've got the one blue vote out of Nebraska, and a few, because Nebraska and Maine, they split their vote. They divvy up their electoral college votes. But this is showing Georgia as a toss-up. Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania as swing states, as toss-ups. So, okay. So
it's not a toss-up.
you've got a 0.4% difference in Michigan, a 0.3% difference in Pennsylvania, right? A 0.5% difference in Wisconsin. Now let's go and look at the ones that they're saying. Some of the other ones that they're saying are safe Harris or even safe Trump, right? So your safe Trumps are, okay. So Georgia is listed as a toss-up at 1.9%, but okay, I've got this sorted by most competitive. Georgia's listed as a toss-up at 1.9%, and then Iowa is the next one. But look at this. You've got, no, not that one. This one. So all of these are within 1 percentage point.
It's like
so once you get,
if it's not close, they can't steal it. So,
right. And we're going to get to that in more detail in a minute here. But as you're looking at this, so that's assuming the toss-ups. Pennsylvania is interesting because right now, several of the originally blue counties, like deep blue counties in Pennsylvania, where Scott Pressler has been working his ass off, have registered more Republican voters than Democrat voters this year. So Pennsylvania really might swing Trump. And frankly, if it does, that's the race.
That's a ball game.
Yep.
That is, I have said for months now, so goes Pennsylvania, so goes the country in this electoral cycle.
If Trump takes,
Waller says Minnesota may be a toss-up for the first time since Reagan, and Minnesota shows Harris at 6.5%, but I don't know if you can underestimate that.
Minnesota is absolutely fortified. The Madison, the city of Madison, and the hinterland of that. It's a Boss Tweed style election machine to turn out the votes of basically immigrant scum. So, yeah, Minnesota.
So this is the 2024 consensus map showing the toss-ups. Now, if we go, and this is still 270 to win, and before I show this next map, remember 270 to win. This is a heavily left-leaning organization that's putting this out. When we go
I meant Minneapolis. Sorry, wrong state. Go ahead.
That's all right.
Yep.
When we go to the no toss-ups, and it changes where it gets rid of the toss-ups. The very left-leaning organization says, nope, Michigan goes to Trump. Pennsylvania goes to Trump. Georgia goes to Trump. Arizona goes to Trump, right? It gives almost all of those toss-ups to Trump. And so if Harris wins if Harris, Trump can basically lose any one swing state and still be good. Harris needs to win all of them.
Yes, that is
especially PA.
Yeah, that's the game theory for this election. I've heard more than one person who is in the know, and take that for what it's worth. But they all say that when you look at the safe states, and then you look at how the math is trending in the toss-ups, the swing states, whatever you want to call them, Harris has to run the table. Now, ironically, we saw Joe Biden run the table in those same swing states of 2020, and I'm sure we'll touch on that at least. But I just don't think that's very, very likely for a couple of reasons. Before we go on, I just wanted to touch two things that I saw in the chat.
I need to say something real quick about the chat. Good morning, Mark. Good morning.
Okay. Wow, that was
Mark gets it. You don't need to.
Right. Anyhow, Waller said Land doesn't vote, which I can only assume based on the general tenor of Waller's comments, he's being sarcastic. Because yes, of course, Land doesn't vote, but it gives you an incentive to vote, because what else are you voting on unless you're voting on the land that you occupy? And then I saw Krista was in the chat who said in 2012 she didn't vote because she had literally just given birth and was still in the hospital. You know what?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that, but I didn't want to run you over then. Here you go.
You know what? I still say, look, love you, Krista, really, but okay, fine. You don't vote in 2012. Like, if you are in the hospital and you can't vote, then don't vote. Like, that might sound cruel.
I want to say two things about that. Okay, so I had just given birth and was in the hospital. That is something that I would personally put on the very, very short list of perfectly acceptable reasons to vote by absentee ballot. If there are acceptable reasons, right?
Propagating the species
is on the list. And then the other one that I'll say is, right now we're looking at an election where what's on the ballot is world peace and cheap gas, and half of women are saying no. It's much more important that I be allowed to kill my own children. And so women's suffrage was a mistake.
Hear, hear.
What?
Repeal the 19th, 100%. Not only was Krista wrong in not voting, she should have filled out an absentee ballot for her newborn as well. Okay.
Well, she's not a Democrat.
Mario, damn it. Correct. She's not a Democrat.
But look, the part of the reason why I just
and real quick, babies aren't allowed to vote, Mario, so she would have to abort first.
It's true. Only the dead can vote. So
right. So part of the reason why
the longer it plays out, okay, for Kamala's chances of winning any swing state increase as time goes on after Election Day when they're still counting the votes. So just keep that in mind. We got about how much has changed since 2020, okay, as far as the loose rules on voting and the mail-in voting and the absentee ballots. There's been some fortification in Arizona and Virginia, or defortification, I should say, in Arizona in getting people off the voter rolls, and in Virginia in getting non-citizens off the voter rolls. But both of those instances are tied
and going to hand-counted paper ballots. Virginia is scrubbing voter rolls, going to hand-counted paper ballots, and they have proposed a measure. It hadn't been ratified or signed, I don't think, but they've proposed a measure to say that we will not certify any election result if Trump or JD Vance are assassinated.
Right. Virginia is one of those states, though, every election cycle where they call it really, really early with only about maybe 20-25% of the vote, and they just look at the initial results coming out of Alexandria and Fairfax and Northern Virginia, basically a Democrat stronghold, right? And they call it just based off that. So I don't know if Virginia should be in play, but I don't know if it'll be given the opportunity to, for that to play out. They might just call it early.
I think in a sane world, Trump wins 40 states, maybe 41. Like
in a sane world, he wins 50.
Well, I don't know how deep we can get into some of the liberal enclaves at this point.
In a sane world, he wins 49, and we just cut California off at the fault line.
I thought you were going to say
swim. Learn to swim.
Swim. I'll see you down in Arizona Bay. The next point I wanted to make, basically, this is by the super leftist organizational math. When you take out the toss-ups, one of the swing states pretty much goes to Harris, but everything else goes to Trump, and the lead in that scenario is just insurmountable. The likelihood she wins most of the swing states is looking more and more slim. And I want to bring us now to the poly market numbers. Okay. So poly market, for those of you who don't know, poly market is showing an aggregate of betting markets. So there's multiple places where you can bet on the outcomes of the election. Poly market is showing the aggregate of all those markets. And as you can see back here, back before the dinner and the white dudes for Harris commercials and all that, it was running neck and neck. And then Kamala gave the middle finger to the Catholics, and that has not worked out for her at all. So the betting markets, now there are a lot of pundits that are making a lot of hay about how much spread there is in the betting markets, but they're talking about it almost like it's just another type of polling data, which is not strictly speaking accurate. When you look at polls, what you're looking at is individual people, a large sample, hopefully, have been asked specific questions. And what the poll reflects is what the people say they will do or plan to do. When you look at the betting markets, what you're looking at is what people believe everybody else will do. Now, when you take this 35.7% for Harris, that's not 35.7% of people plan to vote for Harris. That's 35.7% of people believe that voting on Harris is a reasonable bet. Not they believe she will win, but they believe it's a reasonable bet. And there's a few different types of people who will believe that. The first and most obvious is people who are just died into the cult, Harris supporters, vote blue no matter who, nut jobs. Okay. I don't think that makes up a large percentage of that voting block. And Xander Mack points out that poly market's numbers align with the cookie poll. We can talk about that in just a minute. But that's good data. It's interesting data. So you've got the diehards that are going to vote blue no matter who. But then you've got a subset of people who are making the bet because they like the bet, right? Cameron brought this one up last night in the planning meeting, and he's not wrong. There are a lot of people not a lot of people. There are people out there who are going to say, okay, the odds against Harris winning are so long that if I just bet $100, $500, $1,000, if I bet what is to me pocket change, right, for someone like that, then if I lose, I lose, and it was an expensive lottery ticket. But if I win, I actually win pretty big because we're betting on long odds, right? You're betting on the trifecta. So yeah, hell yeah, I've bought a $5 trifecta ticket, and I've won $5 trifecta tickets. And yep, I'm going to get back to that in just a minute. I don't have the cookie poll numbers pulled up, but I know what you're talking about, Xander. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But there's a third group of people who are absolutely betting for Kamala Harris, and this is going to dovetail us into the rest of the show topic today. There is a group of people who are betting on Kamala Harris, not because they believe that she has the political capital or the political acumen, or the popularity or any other metric by which she's going to win this election. They're betting that Kamala wins because they legitimately, reasonably, and rightly believe that 2020 was stolen. And from that belief, they are operating under the assumption that 2024 will be stolen. Right? So again, it's the difference between the polls and the betting odds. It's the difference between understanding what people are going to do or what they say they're going to do versus what people believe other people will do.
Yeah, it seems like a solid holistic measure. Mm-hmm.
Well, but Xander rightly points out. So he points out that the poly market numbers align with the cookie poll. The cookie poll, I'm sorry, I forget the name of the bakery, but there's a bakery that makes these custom cookies for election parties, and people order the cookies. There'll be one for Democrat and one for the Republican, and year over year, in most election years, the cookie poll pretty accurately predicts who's going to win the election. In fact, in 2020, the cookie poll was one of those metrics that made the outcome look suspicious because Trump won the cookie poll in 2020. If I'm not mistaken, I may be wrong about that, but I think that was on the list of things that made 2020 suspicious, like the bellwether counties.
So, okay, but there's a couple of things going on here that are radically different. A, there's not a pandemic. There's not, the summer of love. In 2020, as a nation, correct, we were so fatigued because everything seemed to be going all right. If you hated Trump, you hated Trump. Fine, whatever. But generally speaking, gas costs less, mortgages cost less, eggs cost less. There's all these things. And then we had this bizarre situation happen that we'd never seen before where, oh my God, wear your mask and get your shots or grandma is going to die. And, Trump has bungled the pandemic response. And there were all these things that were out there. And so the states took advantage. They said, oh, well, we'll just make voting by mail easier. But now, A, we don't have a pandemic, and B, there's a lot of people that now regard the pandemic as bullshit, kind of top to bottom. Oh, you mean if you're not already old or sick, COVID's not that bad? Huh. So it's like most other diseases where if you catch it and you don't have a list of comorbidities, you'll get through it. So we don't have all that slowing us down. The other thing is the trends. I'm old enough to where I can legitimately say I have participated in presidential cycles for 25 years now. And in the 25 years I have participated in such cycles, the trend lines of the polls tell the story. It always have, always will. And the trend lines here are that Kamala went, she had a bump, and then she started to fall. And Trump has just been steadily a tenth at a point of a time going up. The gap between them on Nate Silver's
Yeah, yes, Pitt Danny. Yes, Pitt Danny. I thought about that as well.
We talked about this last night. Sorry, Cameron.
Yeah, here let me briefly speak on this one. So, I was talking to Chris yesterday, right? And I said, wouldn't it be funny if election fraud were actually exposed and something was done about it, not by government inquiry or the House of the House doing another investigation that leads to nowhere. What if it was through civil suits from these betting operations, these bookies, okay, feeling that they were defrauded, all right, they were defrauded out of their bet, and they filed suit against individual states, okay?
It's like fixing a boxing
damages.
match.
Yeah, for damages. So exactly, like it was fixed. Therefore, we're suing in civil court for damages. That would be interesting.
Sue the states and the DNC. I'd love to see class action lawsuits against the DNC for that, right? And so, like we've talked about this on the show before. Here's the problem with voter fraud. There's two major problems with voter fraud from a legal perspective. What you got, Cam?
Well, I was just I was literally almost there before Mario jumped in. I was just gonna say that according to 538, the gap between them, when you look at the trend lines, is less than 2 points. They still got Kamala in the lead, but Democrats tend to lead in these kind of polls. It doesn't mean that they win. It just means that they tend to lead. And as of the latest update, which was October 21st, Harris was up by 1.8 points. And that's not good enough.
To put that into perspective, at this time in 2020, Biden was up by like 8 points under those benchmarks.
Correct.
So, yeah.
And only barely won.
Right.
One.
Yeah, one. Yeah. That's so. I'll get to that in just a second. So before we start digging into voter fraud, This is why I really like that idea, Pitt Danny. And I told Mario as much when he brought it up last night. I made a video about this back after 2020. There are two major problems with voter fraud from a legal and enforcement perspective. The first is there is so much voter fraud in every election ever that it is impossible. The courts can't handle the docket, or at least that's the claim they make. They can't handle prosecuting all of it because there's so much of it. And since they can't prosecute all of it, they choose to prosecute none of it. But the other problem is this. Stick with me, because this is a little game theory piece of data right here. When an election happens, if there is fraud and the fraudster wins, then obviously the fraudster will not be investigating the fraud, because then they would only be investigating and potentially implicating themselves. So when the fraudster wins, the fraud is just ignored. They won. They got away with it. Like in 2020, they got away with it. I've said before, Donald Trump he lost the 2020 election fair and square because he made the mistake of thinking that what he was doing in 2020 was running in an election. He didn't understand that what he was doing in 2020 was conducting political warfare against an entrenched and dangerous asymmetrical opponent. The other side of that is fraud happens in every election, but that doesn't mean that the fraudsters always pull it off. They don't always get it right. They don't always get enough there. And so fraudsters do in fact lose, which should hearten us some, because it means that the elections, at least to some extent, are functional, even if only minimally. But then what happens? The fraud occurred, the fraudsters lost, so the not fraudster gets elected, and nobody gives a shit that there was fraud because the election didn't get stolen. So the winner doesn't prosecute, doesn't investigate, doesn't go after them. One of the things that scares me to death right now is the prospect that Donald Trump wins this election and then fails to go on and prosecute all of the DAs that ran these phony charges up to run investigations on what happened in 2020. Right now, there's a part of me that wants to say let's forget about 2020 and move forward. But the fact is, that if your puppy dog keeps pissing on the carpet, you don't swat that nose with a newspaper from time to time. You're going to have to buy a new carpet. And the United States of America is a pretty important fucking carpet. So we can't keep letting these donkeys piss on the carpet.
Well, the problem with our government is the same as the problem with the fraud in elections. There's so much of it that basically they don't prosecute any of it. Okay, because like I said, there's simply too many individual cases. Well, in the government, there's so many corrupt officials that they don't prosecute any of them simply because there would be too much to prosecute. So I think that
you don't get prosecuted if you're a corrupt politician unless you step out of line.
Yeah, unless
you're George Santos or
Eric Adams
or Bob. Oh man, the senator that just got indicted. Now Bob Menendez. Yes.
Oh yeah. I mean,
well, if you're
hookers blow and gold bullion, it's a bit much. Like there's a limit.
Yeah, if you have to have the plausible deniability, and that's but that's an important point with this. Like we talked about, it's not will they steal, it's can they sell the steel. In 2020,
yes,
they could sell the steel because they could say, of all the reasons that I listed, okay, well, we were in the middle of a pandemic after a really bizarre summer where we had fiery but mostly peaceful protests. Well, now could they sell the steel at this point in time? And
I don't think so.
I don't think so, because what they'd have to go to Bob Menendez levels of just rubbing it in your face.
Right.
Yep.
And so, that's actually what gives me a lot of confidence that Donald Trump will win. Two reasons. Basically, I don't think they can steal the election again this year. And I'll detail that a little bit. And I'm a little torn on this one. I'm not sure if Kamala accidentally ended up being the candidate that they just cannot afford to have the Democrat brand attached to for the next 4 years, or if Kamala is the candidate that they could afford to sacrifice, right? So I think it's either that Kamala Harris ended up where she is by essentially a series of unfortunate events, and the Democrat Party just woke up one day and said, "Holy shit! How did this bitch get?" And they're just having a conniption over the fact that this nut job is in the office. But
that's what I'd like.
Yeah, either she got there by accident, and now they're just doing whatever they can to throw the election to get her out of the way, or they decided way ahead of time that because Joe Biden's presidency has been such a disaster, they need to get their name away from the problems of the United States by letting Donald Trump win again. And so they threw Kamala and Tim Walz in there. Because, I mean, think of the Democratic bench. And if you were going to sacrifice a pitcher to save the star in the ninth inning when you can't win the ball game, who's it going to be?
Kamala didn't get there by accident.
That would be my optimistic assessment of it. That they've already given up on this election cycle. Biden is obviously going to be out of the picture as far as politics is concerned, and they want to get rid of. They want to burn off some bad assets. Okay,
correct.
Use this political cycle as an opportunity to get rid of the dregs. So I would like to believe that. And if they do steal this election, it is going to be 100% face off. We don't fucking care what you think. Your republic is over. So
if they steal this election this time, it will be essentially a total confession of all of the worst accusations that have ever been levied against them. And back to Cameron's point about basically prepping the people for the steal, selling the steal. You know, it's okay. So they had the pandemic and they had the BLM riots. And frankly, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say that the Democrats planned the pandemic just to steal the election. I think there was a lot more to it than that. Mario mentioned burning off toxic assets. It was incredibly convenient for Democrat strongholds like New York that the pandemic happened to only kill off old retirees who were living on government pensions. But I think that basically going into 2020, they decided we're going to, I mean, we all heard Biden say it. We've built the biggest voter fraud machine in history. And of course, we got all the lefty pundits. Oh, it was a gaffe. He meant not that, right? And then of course we had the summer of love. We had riots all over the place, and we had Democrats calling for Trump to intercede in the pandemic and to call in and do things that, hey, at the national level, federal level, you need to institute shutdowns, lockdowns, tell people to stay home. And Trump said, I don't have the authority to do that. They were begging him to take extra constitutional authoritarian measures so that they could criticize that. So basically, going into 2020, the pandemic and the BLM riots were launched by the Democrats to set up a world where they could make the steal happen. They had to create the excuses. And I might not even be there if we hadn't had early in 2020 the war games for how is Donald Trump gonna do this, and what's it gonna look like if Donald Trump tries to steal this election? Why is Donald Trump trying to suppress the vote by stealing mailboxes? Remember that shit?
Yeah.
Right.
Donald
Trump stealing mailboxes so you can't vote.
2020 was the year of the gaslight. You know what I mean? It was a psyop from start to finish. So you want to talk about some individual states here?
Hey, just
Georgia.
Oh yeah, we could talk about Georgia. I have numbers for that. But look, I just wanted to say Kamala didn't get there by accident. She got there on purpose. And according to Montel Williams, it's because that thing's got enough grippy to be able to open a mayonnaise jar.
Where's Cheeseburger? Come on, Cheeseburger, up here. All right. So yeah,
no shit. Where is he, Cheeseburger? Yeah. You're missing it, boy.
It's missing out.
I always feel like I need to take a shower after this is a cheeseburger.
Yeah. All right.
Cheeseburger.
Just throwing cam chum in the water. All right. So let's mention one big thing. One big difference between 2024 and 2020 is Twitter, or X. Okay.
Yes.
X is no longer an asset of the deep state to be leveraged against Trump or against Trump's supporters or conservatives.
Yeah, we'll suspend your account if you circulate the Hunter laptop Biden story.
Yeah. Or just outright banning one of the oldest newspapers in the country, the New York Post, from online. So the fact that X is free, I mean, if there's fraudulent activity, okay, en masse, and people are going to be expecting it, people are going to be looking out for it. There's going to be a lot more poll watchers with hidden cameras, regardless of what the law says. Okay, people are going to be filming this, and Twitter or X is going to explode with material if the steal is on. In 14 days, and it's going to be ready. It's going to be a fire hose of information like it was last time. I'm going to do a better job of documenting it than I did in 2020. I was overwhelmed by it in 2020, to be honest. So,
well, we all were. Don't blame yourself.
That was the point. Mm-hmm.
Well,
to demoralize you.
Well, and of course, like everybody else, I thought there's no way Trump doesn't get reelected. Like. Just no way. So like we got caught with our pants down. Like that is what happened. So Georgia, and then I'll toss it back to you guys just to set the table. Okay. In 2018, Brian Kemp versus Stacey Abrams. Brian Kemp got 1.97 million votes versus Stacey Abrams 1.92 million votes. So it's a little less than 4 million votes. Brian Kemp wins by 50,000 votes. Now, in 2022, Brian Kemp got 2.1 million votes. Stacey Abrams got 1.8 million votes. So Brian Kemp increased his vote share quite a bit, where Stacey Abrams fell off by about 100,000 votes. So you had more total people vote. And Brian Kemp went from winning by 50,000 votes to 250,000 votes. And I think this is notable because after the debacle of 2020, there were a lot of states that went out and passed some measure of defortification laws. And they'd call them voter security acts. But Georgia was one of those states. I didn't think the law Georgia passed was perfect, but I did think that at least directionally it was a step in the right direction. Okay, this is the world we live in now, so let's have rules for the world that we live in now so everybody can know what those rules are and can expect everybody else to abide by them. And I find it very telling that after those laws got passed in 2021, well, we had a test run of it in 2022, and we saw the Democrats lose votes, and we saw the Republicans gain votes. So I would be pretty darn surprised if there aren't at least 5 million ballots cast in Georgia, and if at least 280 to 280, I mean 2.8 million to 2.9 million of those votes go to Trump. I would be legitimately shocked.
After the end of
in 2020. Okay, okay, go ahead.
Oh, good God. Yes, Walter's going to be deleting his browser history immediately after the show ends. Okay, we know. So I just wanted to say that in 28, Stacey Abrams still denies the 2018 election, claiming that it was stolen. That makes her an election denier, and that's dangerous for our democracy.
That makes her a dangerous white supremacist.
Yeah. For our sacred democracy.
And a corn striper.
Which almost died on January 6th.
Of course she did. Shit. Oh, Uncle Steve earlier did the but 81 million votes thing, and that's something that I want to address as well. Biden won with 81 million votes, most votes in history. Here's the problem. According to 2020 census, got about 331 million total population. About 46 million of those are non-citizens who can't vote. About 23% of those are minors. 10% of those are felons. And about 30 million of those are hostile foreign invaders. And no, you did not read that wrong. I did not make a mistake there. 46 million are non-citizens who are lawfully present, resident aliens, etc., counted in the census. And 30 million are somewhere between 20 and 30 million are hostile foreign invaders. Now, all of those numbers are a little shaky because they come from a variety of different sources that don't all agree on them entirely. So like the 10% felons, there are some sources that say it's up to 15%. There are some that say it's as low as 8%. So, I kind of split the difference there. That kind of a thing. The 30 million hostile foreign invaders, that's a tough one to track down. But that leaves 145 million Americans who, roughly, ballpark, who are eligible to register to vote and eligible legally to vote. According to the census that happened to happen in the same year that an election reported around 156 million votes. So I'm expected to believe, despite the fact that there has never been 100% turnout, not of voters, not of registered voters, of citizens who were eligible to register to vote. Most election years, it's just a little over half of eligible voters who vote at all.
That's how you saw in cities in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and in Wisconsin. You saw Democrat stronghold cities having greater than 100% turnout. Okay, Philadelphia was the most egregious with like 200% voter turnout. Okay, that's how you get those fake numbers. And that's simple. Basically, print the ballot. Some campaign person fills it out, and then they submit it. That's it. So just sheer ballot stuffing.
Right. So on the 2020 thing, go ahead, Mario. But I was gonna say that it's inignorable on the preponderance of evidence, like we discussed last night.
Yep.
Excuse me.
So we already have Michigan. The Secretary of State of Michigan has stated that it's going to take 4 days. Okay, they're not going to have results election night. It's going to take 4 days, and somehow.
Okay, that's a steal.
Yeah, bullshit.
Yeah, they're going to try. They're going to try. And some people on Twitter are saying that DC Drano is saying that it's the same thing for every one of the swing states. All right, that there will be results. There will not be results until 4 days after the election. Same thing for Georgia. Like, what is it? 25% of the voting roll of Georgia is absentee. Like, how does that make sense? I mean, I know there's a lot of military in Georgia, but not that many. So that seems pretty suspect. But, well, you got Rafflesberger still in charge, so I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
Look, I don't want to be Pollyannish, but I see Georgia going for Trump, man.
So do I. But
I'm extremely optimistic about the whole election, and largely because I think, frankly, the Democrats they know that they have fucked up so bad, and not only that, but if Kamala were to win, she'll just continue the downward spiral. Now, we're talking about a people who, like I've described in the past, I've explained before, their political compass, their moral compass is essentially they are more interested in causing harm to their opposition, and please believe their opposition, as far as they tabulate it, includes the American people. They're more interested in who they can cause harm to than in getting what they want. So if you put a bill in front of the Democrats to vote for, and it guarantees taxpayer-funded abortion up to and including the time of birth, but does not include that churches will be taxed to pay for it, they'll vote against it until they can find somebody to hurt, because they don't believe that babies are people. So these are the people that we're talking about. But I honestly believe that what the real concern is that if Kamala wins this election, then you've got two back-to-back Democrats with one of the worst records of foreign policy, economic policy, and just disastrous policy generally, back-to-back, and the brand is ruined.
You know, Waller says these women have overestimated their influence. They now think they're in a position to dictate rather than manipulate, and that's just not sitting well with
That's
many
actually
men.
a very astute observation.
Well, I won't go into too much detail for obvious reasons, but Chris, people that you and I know that are Democrats have told me it goes something like this. Yeah, I'm not that big of a fan of Trump because of this and that, but man, Kamala, I don't want that bitch in charge of anything.
Yeah.
And that's what Waller speaks to. Like, you can love it or you can hate it, but there is a push-pull dynamic between men and women. Like, we love each other, but sometimes we kind of hate each other too. And Kamala Kamala's the kind of woman where most men don't want to put up with her shit unless they're sleeping with her. Like,
even then they don't want to. No.
Well, I'm not saying you want. Okay, let me rephrase. You're not willing to tolerate putting up with her shit unless you're sleeping with her.
If that's the best ass in the world, and that's reason enough to keep her around, then you probably want to have yourself an extremely full-time job.
It's like the adage, no matter how hot she is, some guy out there is
somebody's already sick of her shit.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Democrat, Kamala is a terrible choice, and I think that by accident, by pinball, she ended up where she is right now. But I mean, for the Democrats to have an opponent who's the most
some kind of balls.
I was about to say, man, damn it, Chris, that was the joke I was going for.
Got him. So for the Democrats should be blessed in that, their opponent, Donald Trump, is the most polarizing political figure in a generation. Okay. And their candidate that they post against him is someone who is equally polarizing. Okay. That's why they chose Tim Walz as their running mate, but he already blew his chances with that. The VP debate was an absolute disaster for him.
The fact that he can't handle a shotgun.
Yeah,
I mean, every time JD Vance is speaking, I mean, JD's just Tim Walz speaking, and JD's like,
yeah.
And every time JD starts speaking, Tim Walz is sitting there.
The meme energy came late this election cycle. I was worried it wasn't going to come at all.
It came late, but it came hard.
It came hard. Yep. And yeah, I agree with 100% with Cam's statement in the beginning that I don't think they can sell the win. Here's the thing: they can steal it if they really want to. They could steal it. They could run the same ballot mills that they did in four key states, in four key cities in those 4 key states. Okay, and flip the election. All right, like the famous fraud, graph where it spikes freaking 90, and then you know what I'm talking about. They can do it, but I don't think they can sell it. They don't have the mass hysteria of COVID or month upon month of violent race riots, ripping the country apart literally and politically. So I do not believe that they can sell a Kamala win. Right.
Xander pointed out, wait a second. He's now saying he's won a lot of shooting trophies, and obviously you have to believe that. Obviously, Xander's making reference to the video we saw recently of Tim Walz hunting, because he hunts all the time, and he doesn't know how to hold a shotgun when he's loading it. And guys, oh my God. We're supposed to believe that this man was a command sergeant major in the U.S. Army.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know how to handle a shotgun.
I want to see Waltz. I want to see Waltz strip an AR. I want to see him strip an M16. I want to see
exactly. Yeah.
Well, and what was funny about that to me, like as I watched that video, I was like, man, a 13-year-old that plays Call of Duty could have done a better job than that. Like that was just awkward. It was terrible. Like all the fun jokes, be very, very quiet.
Yes, the FUD memes have been on point after that. Absolutely. And like, now wait a second. He's now saying he's won a lot of shooting trophies, and obviously you have to believe that. Did he win those in Tiananmen Square? Here you go. An actual sergeant major points out that he's an infantry CSM who cannot shoot. Ooh, buddy.
I didn't know he was 11 Bravo.
Mario, do you remember hearing these words? Captain Fergal J. O'Reilly, infantry commanding. Yep. We're an MI unit.
Yep. It's one of the most passively menacing men I've ever met.
Remember running with Captain O'Reilly, and he'd shout at you, "It's all right, you fat fuckers." It's all right, because I can run faster than you. I need you back there to catch my rounds. Yes, sir.
So So just to bring it home, because Waller has been rather insightful in chat today, and one of the other things that he said is that girls tend to dislike other girls that have the mean girl energy.
Yes.
And there is part of that going on, for sure. But ultimately, I think what this is going to come down to, like, your kitchen table economics always win. It's the economy, stupid. And yes, it is the economy, stupid. I talked about in the beginning of the broadcast that we eat a lot of eggs at my house, and this is something that's just, it flabbergasts me. But we eat so many eggs. When we buy eggs, we buy the big pallet of 60. That big pallet of 60 eggs just a few years ago, and I mean less than 5 years ago, go to Walmart and it was $4, $5, $6, depending on the average price of eggs. I bought one of those pallet of eggs about a week and a half ago. It was $18 at Walmart.
Yep.
And it's not just eggs.
I'm going to buy one for $18 at Walmart today.
And it's not just eggs. It's laundry detergent. Yep. Okay. It's cheese. It's ground beef. It's these staples that people are exposed to day after day. And
Walmart's got steaks for $20 a pound. For $20 a pound, I'd like to know the cow and the butcher personally.
Yeah, that's ludicrous.
Well, but that's not the world we live in anymore.
It's not even a choice.
And I have, and I, going back to people that I'm going to keep somewhat anonymous, but I've interacted with people with Black women that traditionally voted Democrat that have said to me, my coins were better under Trump. That's just a fact. And it's very, very disturbing to me that there's all these women in the world that are more interested in killing their babies than they are with paying their bills.
That's why I'm saying it's not the economy. Like that was true for a generation. It was James Carville's like big thing. It's the economy, stupid. That would be the case if it were not that record numbers of Americans' lives are directly subsidized by the federal government. Okay, you have a lot of people living basically immune from the market forces around us with inflation, simply because they depend on the federal government to feed themselves.
Okay. Shit, you broke my okay, yes. And what Cameron was saying, so we talked a little bit earlier about how about 50% of women, according to polls, are basically voting single issue on abortion, right? But there's another chunk of women who are voting Democrat, and there's some overlap here. Like I was talking about earlier, how the Democrat always wants somebody to get hurt, even if they get everything they want. And Cameron's got a story about a chick you were talking to at a bar and tax cuts that's illustrative of this point.
Oh, okay. I know what you're referencing. Yeah.
I hope so. It's your story.
Yeah. Look,
that's why I'm asking you to tell it. I'm not trying to tell it for you.
Well, look,
tell us a story, Cameron. Tell us a story.
Okay, so I'm a big fair tax supporter, have been for a long time, and there was a bartender that I knew who wasn't just a bartender. She also had another job. I forget what it was. Doesn't matter for the purposes of this story. She was a fairly attractive woman. Her man was kind of a loser, so she's working 2 jobs, like just barely paying the rent on time, and said something to me kind of offhand about how frustrating it is that her tips were taxed. And I was like, well, there's actually a tax proposal that would eliminate that. It's the fair tax. And I explained it to her. And once she got the concept of the fair tax, the first thing that she said to me was, well, wait a minute, but what about rich people? Do they get to keep their entire paycheck too? And it was everything I had in me not to be like, bitch, that's not your concern. You're working too. You could keep your entire paycheck and maybe go down to just one job, or you could worry about how bad this affects other people. But there you go. That's the story. There's not much to it.
She would rather see someone else suffer than she herself not suffer.
Yeah.
She would rather suffer than see someone else be made whole. And that's what they are.
I think Trump touched on this at the dinner when he made the joke, like, I don't mind the white dudes for Harris. Their wives and their lovers will vote for me.
That one in the. I noticed Tim Walz isn't here tonight, but it's okay. He'll say that he was.
Well, that one got me. That one, I was laugh out loud at that moment. Yeah.
Well, Trump does appear to have excellent political instincts. They come out in a very Trumpian way in which he talks. But what he was identifying there is exactly what we're talking about. How there were women who maybe disliked Trump in 2020, but now they've gone through. This is a really unique point in time in history where we can have the direct comparison in such a stark way. And it's going to be hard to argue with, okay, we did have no new wars. We did have cheap gas. We did have affordable groceries. We did have affordable housing. And then, but Orange Man bad, and we can't have bad. So we made the switch, and now we've seen what happens when we make the switch, when we vote for the feels. And there are I think just enough women out there that are like the person that I referenced that said my coins were better under Trump. And that is a fairly common sentiment. Like when you can't pay your bills, what's the Laszlo hierarchy of needs? Well, how you feel about things comes after whether or not you can survive.
Yeah, your fuzzy socks come after steak.
Shit. Your fuzzy socks come after canned tuna and ramen. Ramen is expensive. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, you remember when you could get a pallet of ramen for $4?
Waller asks, what is the follow through basically on the emotions-based voting, female contingent? Well, that's why we have election month, Waller, to give them every opportunity possible.
And Cameron, I've explained this to the audience before, but it's really your theory to put forward. And since Waller put it this way, will you explain why Democrats love abortion?
Well, super short version. I think that this is a sacrosanct issue for the left, because if you can get a woman to have an abortion, or you can get a woman to support a best friend or a daughter in having an abortion, you turn them into a Democrat voter for life, because that's a left-wing issue. So now they have to believe all left-wing issues, because if you consider that, okay, maybe the Republicans are right. Maybe a flatter tax code is actually a good idea for the economy. I wonder what else the right was correct about. And then they bump into that whole thing like, oh my God, did I encourage my daughter to murder my grandchild? And you meet a lot of women
and just
that claim.
Yes, Bryan Cranston. Yes, you did.
And you meet a lot of women. I've heard this more than once over the course of my life. They'll say, I'm pro-choice. Now, look, I would never personally have an abortion. And if my daughter was pregnant, I would encourage her to have the baby. But I would never tell another woman what she can or can't do with her body. And when I hear that, what I hear is, you're actually not pro-choice. You
describe that's my mom. Basically, that's boomer female. That was their take on it. That was their consensus.
no, Trump's going to win. Hey, you guys want to come back next week and do like a fantasy game day draft of like what state goes where?
Yeah, I'll play.
Are there prizes?
Yeah, yeah. There are prizes. You get to go on living.
It's not enough that I should win. Others must suffer. Oh, shit. I guess I'm.
Well, Mario, I promise, if you continue existing, there will be suffering.
I cause passive suffrage. I cause. All right, that was lame. Anyway,
it was a nice try, Mario.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in it there. Thanks for joining us this morning, guys. Do you have anything you want to close on?
I mean, look, that you cannot save this country by voting. Okay. But if for nothing else, be like me, vote for Trump just because he makes my enemies seethe. And that's enough for me. And maybe things won't be quite so bad. So not exactly inspirational, but please vote. Well,
and in all seriousness, like as much as I believe that 2020 was, let's say, hinky at best, that's no excuse to not vote. Like we are in the phase of the game where this is the game. These are the rules. Okay, they suck a giant trash bag full of dicks. Sure, whatever. Go play the game to win. I think early voting is retarded. I would eliminate it. Like, seriously, you get 1 day to vote, and if you can't figure out how to get to the poll, don't vote. However, that's not the world we live in. The world we live in has the early voting, has all the things we don't like. So take advantage of it. Don't. In fact, I'm going to say something that I don't actually agree with, but tactically, I think it's the thing to do. Vote early. Go ahead and get it done, because if there's a problem with your ballot, you need to know. And if any type of ballot harvesting is legal in your state, do it, because the left is going to do it. So don't let them have the advantage.
Yeah, it's the enemy's tactics. When the enemy employs a tactic, you have to recognize that tactic. Me personally, I don't tend to shoot women and children, but sometimes they explode, and you have to take that into account.
I harvested my 96-year-old grandmother's vote last week.
My man.
Well, I don't want to vote. Trump's such a fucking asshole. I don't want to vote for that guy. I'm like, yeah, I know, Grandma. Okay, but he's our asshole. So I'm just going to go ahead.
That's right. He's our asshole.
Yep, straight ballot. Okay, good job, Grandma. All right, sign here.
All right, you guys. All right, so thanks for watching today, guys. I think that was pretty solid. So thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Hit us up at buymeacoffee.com/thebrushfiremind. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.